From Nintendo Everything, we have an article that was posted a couple weeks ago titled, Aonuma says Nintendo will never reveal Zelda Wild's timeline placement. It's a very lengthy title. But anyway, it gets to the point. Where Breath of the Wild sits specifically in the Zelda timeline is something that has been a big question since the game's release last March. More like March and a half and another year. But anyway, however, series producer IG Aonuma has indicated that Nintendo will never place it in the chronological timeline. In the newly translated Zelda Breath of the Wild Creating a Champion book, Aonuma explained that people were enjoying imagining the story that emerged from the fragmental imagery we were providing. If Nintendo were to say where Breath of the Wild sits in the timeline, then there would be a definitive story, and it would eliminate the room for imagination, which wouldn't be as fun. Aonuma stated the following. The final thing I'd like to convey to all of our players is that the video games, not just Zelda, can go much, much farther. We got a lot of responses from adult players who said they felt the same way playing this game as they did when they used to be hooked on video games when they were younger. We made this game with the intention of returning to our roots, so the response from players about feeling the same as they did when they were young is promising. Since Nintendo Switch is portable, I hope they will be able to engage deeply with the game in a fresh, new way too. In books like the recently released The Legend of Zelda Encyclopedia, we revealed where each Zelda game fell on the timeline and how stories related, but we didn't do that for Breath of the Wild. There's a reason for that. With this game, we saw just how many players were playing in their own way and had those reactions I just mentioned. We realized that people were enjoying imagining the story that emerged from the fragmental imagery we were providing. I'll skip to the next paragraph because I already said that. We want players to be able to continue having fun imagining this world even after they are finished with the game. So this time we decided that we would avoid making clarifications. I hope that everyone can find their own answer in their own way, which they did still say it's at the end of the timeline, and to that I would say our theory, which, I say ours, but I first heard it from Daniel, and then I helped with the video on it, voicing it. I'm like, I would still say that holds true. It's at the end, and it is all three, or any of the three.
Yeah. So this statement, the interesting thing about this is that much like Triforce Heroes, they released Triforce Heroes saying that it was a side game that did not take place anywhere in the timeline. It was just its own side multiplayer game. About a week or two after it launched, I think it was Aonuma was in an interview, and he said, it's a direct sequel to A Link Between Worlds. It takes place directly after A Link Between Worlds, and you are also playing with the exact same Link as A Link Between Worlds. So
he just looks completely different now.
Yeah. So with this, the interesting thing here is that even in we'll get to what Ilya said in just a second, but even in this, he says that they've seen how much fun other people were having when they were playing the game, and they didn't want to restrict that by placing it in the timeline. So that means he didn't get the idea of not having it in the timeline until the game was already made, which doesn't make too much sense, because that would mean up until that point, from what he is saying, that they had an idea of where it might be in the timeline, but then after seeing people having fun with it, they were like, maybe we shouldn't put it in the timeline. But then, after this interview happened, because this was a statement made before the book originally released in Japan, because it was a statement that they put inside the book. So it's likely the statement itself, it's probably like a month or two even before the book itself was released. That way they could edit everything. They'd have time to edit everything down and add the pictures in and actually send the book off to be published. But with this, so after this statement was made, Nintendo updated their official website and actually put a location of where Breath of the Wild would be placed, which is at the end of all three of the timelines. And then even after he did that, there was another statement where he said that it's basically up to the players to decide. And like with each of the 3 timelines, so much time has passed that basically no matter what happens, Breath of the Wild is like a constant. Like it always ends up happening. So
Yeah.
in that 10,000 years between Breath of the Wild and Zelda 2, or Breath of the Wild and Twilight Princess, or Breath of the Wild and Spirit Tracks, there are so many things that could happen within that 10,000 years, because all of the other Zelda games fit within, I would say, like 7,000 to 8,000 years is like all of the other Zelda games, because each game is thought to be most of the time just a few hundred years after each other. So if you have the entire Zelda timeline within like 6, 7, 8,000 years, imagine what you could have from the end of one game and 10,000 years afterwards. So like events could happen to where like literally the exact same events from all 3 timelines end up just happening in the other timelines, because like we don't know what could happen. Like after Twilight Princess, something could happen to make the world flood like it did in Wind Waker. We just don't know, because it doesn't really say what happened within that 10,000 years. So yeah, I guess
if I can address something in the chat.
Hi Daniel.
Hello. Grady. Maybe it's Grady. I'm going to say Grady like Brady. Grady Todd says, if you don't know the timeline, go by the cap of the wild. The band on the cap is only in one timeline. And I did mention this in the chat as well. I responded. But that's a pretty... I know you're referring to Matt Pat's video about the timeline video where he mentions that. It's a weak argument, though, because...
Very weak.
It's a stripe on one of the outfits you can get in the game.
Yeah.
And also, there's so many other references to other games that just taking into account one stripe on one outfit is weak. You could also say the champion's tunic is blue, and the only time that he canonically wears a blue outfit predominantly is Wind Waker, when he wears his pajamas on the second playthrough. So there's that connection there, so it could only be that timeline.
Well, it's even at the beginning of the first playthrough as well.
That's true. There you go.
There are interviews with Aonuma, Miyamoto, and others that have worked on Zelda games that says that the way they decide the way that Link looks for each game, or that the way that areas look in each of the games aren't based off of lore. It's just what they think would be fun for that game.
And
so,
further to that is like they Aonuma said when they first revealed Link's look, people were like, well, does Link wear green? Whatever. And he says, I don't want you hung up on Link's outfit because that is not important to the game.
No.
Or, that's to paraphrase. But basically, it's like people shouldn't be focused so much on what defines Link's outfit or what defines Link by his clothes, because that's not really important when it comes down to it. Then when you play the game, guess what? It's actually not important that he doesn't wear green. I don't miss it. So I don't know, like for me, that's the thing, is you could also just get the other costumes and then make the same argument, because you can wear the Twilight Princess tunic and you could say, well, now he's got chainmail under his tunic and there's only one timeline where that happened. So I think it was a reference. Like when they put it in, it's a reference to the old Zelda games or that timeline. That does not make it a canonical certainty that that's where it takes place. That said, if you look on the official Nintendo website and you pull down that downfall timeline, you will see Breath of the Wild listed there. But as we mentioned before, if you go to any of them, the official Nintendo website has it listed at the end of all 3 timelines. So I'm sorry to crush everyone's dreams. I hate to be a negative person who just puts down what other people say, but sometimes I just... And you can't just take something as trivial as that and ignore all other evidence anywhere,
I would even say 90% of the videos that is on the Game Theory channel are wrong, because they like to use evidence that will help support their theories while ignoring any evidence at all that goes against it. And the reason that video or the theories on my channel and other channels, like you see on H&K or Commonwealth Realm and stuff, is because whenever we make our theories, we include everything to support it, as well as everything that would kind of go against it, which is, there's a big example of that on the newest video that Ilya and I were working on about Agatha from Twilight Princess. I guess the video's coming out soon enough that I don't really have to stream offline. What? Oh, now it's back online. That's weird.
It went down, it's back up.
Yeah.
It's weird.
But the video not only has facts supporting it, but in the video I literally also say that a lot of people also just believe that Agatha, I was almost going to say Ilya is crazy, but they believe that Agatha...
I am crazy.
Yeah, they believe that Agatha is just crazy, and that in her head, she thinks it is true, that she does have special abilities, and she is magical, and she can talk to bugs, which is why she sent out all of the messages to all of the bugs to come to her ball, or whatever. So
weird.
Yeah, whether or not she does have abilities, in her own head, she still believes that she does. She could believe that she does because she actually, in fact, does. Just like Link believes in Twilight Princess, he can turn into a wolf. If you said, like, if a normal person said that to you, you would be like, you are crazy. But he can turn into a wolf. No one else in the game really sees him turn into a wolf because...
you're not allowed to.
Yeah,
it
Midna will literally come up and tell you not to. So...
people are watching.
Yeah, so... if Link goes around and tells people in the game that he can turn into a wolf, they'll just be like, you are crazy, get out of here. So with this girl telling people she can talk to bugs, who knows? Crazier things have happened. Fish could turn into birds. So
that's
magical.
That's true.
That's true.
Magical
or
little.
Fish can draw a map for you. They're fish cartographers.
Yeah. There
Yeah,
are
seriously.
magical little kids that never age that also happen to live in a magical forest who are followed 24/7 by a magical fairy that if they did not have that fairy, they would turn into skeletons. Those magical...
none of them are siblings. They're all have one thing in common, and their dad is a talking tree.
Yeah. And those magical little kids who are made from flesh end up turning into wooden stick people. So...
Yep. Little stubs.
Crazier things have happened.
Fish in Wind Waker draw you the maps of the islands. But how do they draw maps of the islands when the land is the only part that they can't go on?
Maybe
Exactly.
because... So my thought is that I imagine some of the fish, especially the more intelligent talking fish that we see, were also friends with the Zora. Like they could just be seen as like different species. Like you could look at like a monkey or an orangutan or a gorilla. Like they're all kind of
Oh,
the
now
same.
we're getting into Donkey Kong lore, huh?
Yeah. So in this... So in
Sorry.
in Wind Waker, you could, or in the Zelda series, you could say that, well, this is a smart talking fish that is the race of Azora, and this other thing is a smart talking fish that is in the race of another thing. So it could be similar. So they're just like, hey, cousin, now that, you know, we have feet and we can walk on land, here's what this land looks like. So then they draw you the map. Or they give the
Anything is
information about the
possible.
map.
You thought about this way more than I did.
Yeah. I literally only thought of it just now, so...
Oh, okay. So maybe same amount as I did.
But anyways, what were we talking about before, though?
Zelda theories
the
don't
placement,
just...
which...
Oh, yeah.
What I was going to say on that is
Yes,
there's a
say
reason this makes perfect sense for Aonuma to say it's wherever you want it to be. And just kind of just putting it at the end. First of all, it gives more credit to the idea that it's a dragon break. But the thing is,
Dragon Break.
he's basic by putting it at the end and saying it's wherever you want it to be. He's also at the same time saying it's all three. So when people try to say, oh, well, it's definitely the downfall. Oh, it's definitely child. Oh, it's definitely adult. It's like, first of all, we have Aonuma saying it's wherever you want it to be. Second of all, you cannot say it's only one of them. Why? Because if you can give all the evidence of the world to show me that it's in the adult timeline, and I will give you all the evidence of the world to prove that it's in the downfall timeline, and at the same time that it's in the child timeline.
Yeah.
They purposely made this game to have Easter eggs from all three timelines. You cannot argue for just one. You can't, because no matter what you give me for one timeline, I can give you something for a different timeline. That's why it's perfect that Aonuma said, you know what, it's wherever you want it to be, because it has things from all three. It's at the end, so therefore it's all three.
The interesting thing is also him saying that it takes place 10,000 years after any of the other games, and just having you pick wherever you want it to be goes against other things that he said as well. Because him saying, like, if you just take the one quote by itself where he says that it's wherever you want it to be,
We could say the beginning.
that goes directly against everything else that he said as well. Because before the game came out, there were a few facts that he did give us, where one, I think two of these were from one interview, and
the Game
another
Informer?
one was from other interviews. I don't know if it was Game Informer, but it was all around the Breath of the Wild E3 time, so it was before Game Informer had their long interview with him and Miyamoto. But he said that the game takes place long after Ocarina of Time,
Yep.
in a timeline where they have had many battles with Ganondorf, or Ganon. Someone asked, or I don't know if they asked it, but they were like, well, this game has the Deku Tree and Koroks, and you find sea salt. So this game definitely takes place after Wind Waker, right? And Aonuma said that the story of the game has nothing to do and is not connected at all to the Wind Waker. That the Deku Tree and the Koroks are only in the game because they just happen to have the character models from Wind Waker, which they had just remade while working on Breath of the Wild, and they just copied and pasted them all over and tweaked them a bit, so that would save time.
Something as well with that, I always found that the Korok argument weak, because for me it's like, just because you only have seen the Koroks in that timeline does not mean that they would necessarily only in that timeline.
Yeah.
Just means we haven't seen them. Because there's like, the Koroks, when you find them in Breath of the Wild, are surprised that a Hylian can see them. Like, the first Korok you find, if you restart your game over, he'll be like, whoa, you can see me?
Yeah.
Surprised us. Same with Hestu as well. Surprised that you can see him.
Yeah. And there's...
So that doesn't... They could have been there this whole time, and just no one knew about him. Kokiri could still be in Twilight Princess, but Link can't see them there. There's some food for thought.
Yeah.
And also, when it comes to timeline stuff, well, obviously, whatever the directors say, that's what it is. Or whatever, like, the most recent thing is that they say. At the same time, they only do this for us. This is not something that they planned. Skyward Sword was planned. And I do know that with some of the other games, they did plan to a degree some of it. But at this point, it's kind of like, well, people are talking about it, and if people keep asking me about it, I'm going to say this. Because they can say whatever the heck they want on it.
Yeah.
In the chat there, okay, no, for one thing as well, first, just to go back to real quick what I was saying to Grady, Tom, as well. This is not to say that I think your theory about it being in the downfall timeline is wrong. Because again, the quote Aonuma said, it's up to the fans, whatever. If you look on the official Nintendo website, it does show it's there. What I was saying about that is, do not just take one piece of evidence and disregard everything else. You cannot blind yourself that way.
Yeah.
Side note, or maybe sidelining the conversation in the chat, Ryan Pagan says, I imagine all the Zelda games as being like a story being told from one person to another, etc., etc. This is what I call the literal legend interpretation, as in it's literally a legend of Zelda. No. No. I decline your offer, Ryan, because you cannot say
Javier in the chat
is a retelling of the same
a quote that's wrong.
Oh, Javier, let's see. Where?
He says that Miyamoto did state that they never thought about a timeline when making these
Also
Zelda
wrong.
games. Yeah,
Also wrong, because Miyamoto said, like, before releases of games, he would say when they took place. Even Zelda 1, okay, Zelda 2, okay, Link to the Past, he explicitly says, this is a prequel. And then when Link's Awakening, okay, this is a sequel. And then Ocarina of Time came out, he's like, this is a prequel. Like, he explicitly would say as they're coming out. And Ryan, about the literal legend interpretation, you cannot say that these games are retellings of the same story when they reference each other and say that this is a legend about this thing and happened, and it is the other game. It can't be if they sequentially occur and make deliberate reference to each other occurring.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to say that. If you do think that, it implies to me that you, and I don't want to put you down, of course, I don't want to be mean, but that maybe you're not looking into it, or you're willfully deciding to ignore these references to the other games.
Yeah, so there are
not
two
to
things.
be mean, I'm so sorry.
There are I would say, okay, so there are the normal fans, and like the people who say something that is wrong. There are, I would say, two different sides to that. One are the normal, casual fans that just may not know all of the facts.
Mm-hmm.
While the other is the casual fan, or even the hardcore fan, that despite having the information shown to them, they just like the idea so much that even though they know they're wrong, they can't accept they're wrong. So they're being, in my words, an idiot and still trying to debate against it, even though you literally show them an interview where Aonuma says they are wrong.
Yeah.
And
like
the
again,
theories
like,
that we've seen,
frankly, you
and
play
they
like
contradict
half of the
themselves
games.
all the time.
It's true. Nintendo does go back on their word a lot, but to be honest, if you just play the games and you're like, this is how I enjoy playing the games, and I don't want to think about the timeline, I don't care about it, whatever. Okay, sure, but and this is not what you were doing, Ryan, because you said I like to think of it this way. But if people try and convince you that it is one way,
that all the games
because
take
they
place
are
on
just
their own
choosing
and are unconnected.
Yeah, I've had people post on Facebook comments sections on like Zelda Dungeon articles. The worst place to engage on the internet in any sort of discussion, by the way. And they are determined to convince everybody that interpretation of theirs is fact.
Yeah.
And nothing else, despite the fact that Nintendo says this, and the games say this and this and this and this to connect them. And they're like, no, because I've always thought about this when I was 8 years old. It's just like, you need to stop.
Yeah.
You need to just accept it. Like, that's how you want to play it? Sure, fine. But don't tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So, yes. Sorry, I'm getting worked up. I love you, Ryan. I don't know you, but...
and they also commented back in the chat, and they were like, oh, didn't think about that. Makes sense.
Yes.
But
so they may have been more of a casual gamer. Also, someone who clearly has the wrong number is messaging me, and they're really mad at me, apparently.
Oh, wow.
No, they're really mad at they're really mad at someone named John.
Okay, nice.
What did John do?
I'm not John. I don't
It's
know.
Jonathan in the chat. The guy that
Jonathan, what did you do?
Yeah, so the easiest way for you, if you do have someone who is just misinformed, whether they are just misinformed and don't know better, or if they are idiots who just refuse to believe despite having the fact shown to them, the easiest way to prove them wrong when they say that there was never a Zelda timeline, that it was just something fans made up, or if they say that Aonuma and Miyamoto never intended for them to be a timeline. They had the very first game, and then the next game they had was literally called Zelda 2. Immediately creating a timeline that Zelda 2 takes place after Zelda 1.
Yeah.
And then even after that, they had a Link to the Past, which was named A Link to the Past because it was meant to be a prequel to the other two games. So then, adding on to the timeline, you have Zelda 3, Zelda 1, and then Zelda 2. And then they have the fourth Zelda game, Link's Awakening, which is a sequel to A Link to the Past, adding to the same timeline, because then you have Zelda 3, Zelda 4, Zelda 1, Zelda 2. And then Zelda 5, Ocarina of Time, comes out, and they make it a prequel to all of the other games. Once again, adding on to the timeline. So from the very beginning, there was always a timeline. And if you tell someone and you explain it like we have to someone and they still don't believe you, you can go and show them the interviews where they have said this. And if they still don't believe you, you can just decide they're an idiot and move on and don't waste your time, because they're one of the people that understand and know they are wrong. They just do not want to admit to being wrong.
Yeah.
And some people really just do not care about that aspect. Like,
and if you
my
don't,
brother,
that's fine.
whenever I bring it to him, he's like, I don't care. I just want to play the game. And it's like, okay. And he knows I'm the freak that enjoys the lore.
Yeah.
All right.
It's funny because my brother started texting me once. He missed out on a bunch of Zelda games. Played Ocarina of Time. He played Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess. Kind of fell off with that, and then he got back into Breath of the Wild, and he starts texting me. He's like, "Hey, I got a question about this," and then I'd write him a freaking essay back about Zelda lore, and he's like, "Jesus, what have I done?" But I was gonna bring up something. Oh yes, so a good. This is a very old video because it came out about the time of Twilight Princess or a bit after Twilight Princess. But the originator of gaming on the internet as a real community and viable video making idea, the angry video game nerd James Rolfe made a video titled "The Zelda Timeline Makes No Effing Sense." And ironically, in it, he actually explains the Zelda timeline pretty comprehensively. There's not actually a lot of anger in the video. He does it up a little bit here and there, but forced, to be honest. But in that video, he mentions all these interviews. He's explaining it through an order of release and then placing it into the timeline in order of release. And he builds the timeline up to that point and explains it very comprehensively. And he kind of forces the rage. But the thing is, in that video, he outlines all these interviews where Miyamoto's saying oh, this is the prequel to this and this game featuring the ancestors of the Link and Zelda from this game. And that and I would suggest it's a very funny video, so I would maybe recommend going and check it out. It's a very old video. Again, it's probably, I'm pretty sure it came out around the time of Twilight Princess, so it's probably a 10 to 12-year-old video now. But for me, that was the moment it really clicked in my head that okay, these games connect and they connect well, and I want to know more about it. So there's the origination of Daniel's craziness as well. But go check that out after this podcast is done, because we still want to retain your viewership.
Also, one thing that I do want to point out before anyone makes this mistake, I think this is a casual gamer mistake. Please stop saying that the adult timeline is Ocarina of Time Link who stayed as an adult.
Oh,
that does not exist.
It doesn't make sense.
Doesn't exist.
No, because he gets sent back, and then Wind Waker happens because he didn't stay.
Yeah.
So basically, what happened is Zelda sent him back and was like,
"Yeah." So from Zelda's point of view, going forward, she's still here. The world still moves from there,
and it's still
Wind Waker happens without Link. And then, Cliff just posted video link. Is this it, Cliff? Did you find it? He found it.
Yeah.
The legend. He found. Thank you, Cliff. Thanks for finding that. That is an old video. It's really funny and worth watching. But he does bring up a lot of these interviews and stuff like that. I might be missing. I haven't watched it in years. Maybe I should go back and watch it. But thank you, Cliff, finding that. You're my hero.
With what Ilya was explaining, the easiest way to say it is, it's not the timeline where Link stays as an adult. It's the timeline where Link was an adult, because
where
technically
Link was an adult.
Technically, he wouldn't still be an adult because he just does not exist at all there. But he was an adult, and then he
ironically the adult timeline
is where he is still a child.
Yeah,
the adult timeline is the next game that happens is Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass, and Spirit Tracks, and those links are all still a child. And then in the child timeline, following Majora's Mask, there's Twilight Princess, where Link is an adult. So
Pretty much.
how you can remember it is that it's all backwards, and the adult timeline is where Link is a child, and the child timeline is where Link is an adult. So there's that one for you guys.
Yeah. All right. I guess we can move on to the next
Thanks,
thing.
Nintendo.
It's like this is just an example of, like maybe
How
that was their
they're-
intentions. Like at the time they were creating this book, but then afterwards, in the same way that in this before he said that it didn't place in the timeline, or they didn't want to put it in the timeline. But then the same with Triforce Heroes, they said they didn't want to place it in the timeline. But then afterwards, they ended up saying, yes, it is in the timeline. In fact, here's where it's at. And in the same way with Breath of the Wild, after this statement was made, Aonuma came back out and was like, yeah, this is where it's at. It's just after long after all of the other games.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Sorry, I keep laughing. This person is really mad at someone.
What are they saying?
Okay,
Did you
just a
reply
quick
back and
tangent.
say that it wasn't?
Here's the creepy part. They messaged me in September, and this message came back today. They messaged me in September, I'm at the bridge, goodbye, John. Which at first I was like, is this like what I think it is? Is this someone that is going to jump, and even though I'm the wrong number, I need to help them? I don't know. So I messaged back, my name's not John, I think you have the wrong number.
They're like, what the hell, John?
I know, and they never messaged back. But then all of a sudden, just now, I get a message from this number. Then why did you talk to me all day? What was the point? And I
What?
wrote back, you have the wrong number with the emoji that's going like this. And then they
My wife's
said-
favorite emoji, by the way.
I love that emoji. It's so me. I'm always like, huh. And this, now they said, have a good, miserable life you've always had and always. I hope your life continues of pain and death and misery. And I just wrote back, and I hope you find the correct number of the person you're apparently so upset with. Best of luck. I'm like, I'm not John. I actually don't have a miserable life. I'm pretty blessed. I really actually want to message. Actually, I reneged that. I hope you don't find their number. I feel bad for them.
Poor John.
What is wrong?
John. Oh my goodness.
Anyway, that's why I keep laughing, because I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I looked at the number. It's like in Virginia or something. I know people in Virginia, but I'm
Where
not
is
John.
Just out of curiosity. I don't
What?
know I don't know my
It's a
American
state.
geography very. No, I know it's a state, but where geographically? I don't know my
It's
American
like 7
geography
hours.
very well.
It's like 7-8 hours north of Florida.
Okay, so Florida's on the
We're the little
East
peninsula.
Coast. It's at the East
Coast.
Coast.
We're the peninsula. We're that little edge
Okay.
that sticks out at the end.
Virginia's where the president
Yes.
is.
Yes. Pennsylvania Avenue.
But isn't the White House? The White House is not in Virginia.
Yeah.
Washington, D.C., yeah.
Is that? Oh, it's right. No, it's not in. It is. Oh,
So there's-
no.
there's-
I don't know my American
Yeah, there's-
geography.
It's not in Washington.
There is
State.
the-
Washington is like super close to you.
Yeah.
Washington is
Yeah,
completely
Washington State,
northwest.
right? Is different than Washington.
There is
DC.
a more
Just like
important
New York and New York are different for some reason. Is that
Okay.
right? New York.
New York,
State.
there's New York. New York City
New York.
is in New York State.
Yeah.
Yes. I guess Quebec is the same way because it's Quebec City.
Yeah. And then
In the
like there's
province.
Oklahoma.
We
and
also have
Oklahoma
West
City.
Virginia.
Yeah.
You also have too many states. That's why I can't keep track. We have,
We have
like
50.
we have a dozen. That's it. That's how many
Yeah.
provinces we have.
Even
It's
worse.
so much easier to remember.
We have 50 states and then like a dozen or so provinces and other areas that we technically own,
Right.
but
Like
It's
they just didn't
confusing.
want to. I guess they didn't want to make another flag, and they just like the even number of 50. So
like-
they
Yeah, there's
just
too many
stars.
stars. It's
that's
it's
enough
ridiculous.
stars.
yeah.
Yeah, and then of course
Oh.
the 13 stripes to represent the 13 colonies.
Matt Fry says, this is confusing to Daniel. Yes, it is.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Hey, it'd be the same if we went to Canada.
Let's move on
We'd
to
be like, "What?"
the next one, right?
You probably don't know where New Brunswick is, so I'm good.
That's
I have
also
a friend from Brunswick, Ohio.
Not the same.
okay. So
That's old Brunswick.
what I was
Sorry,
gonna say
Jesse, what are we
earlier-
doing
No,
now?
I was gonna say, let's move on to the next one. But first, while you were talking about Washington and Washington D.C., so I guess technically Washington is just Washington, and then Washington D.C. would be like Washington District of Columbia, is what D.C. stands for, I imagine.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? District of
It's
Columbia?
really confusing.
But then
Because the province of it is BC, which is British Columbia, but we're on the West Coast. West Coast.
So,
Yep.
adding to that, while there is what many people would consider to be the most important building in America, in Washington, D.C.,
Wow.
the state of Washington has an even more important building, which is the Nintendo headquarters.
In Redmond.
Yes.
Redmond, Washington. See, I know my Nintendo geography.
Yeah. So,
My brother was born in Washington, Seattle.
nice.
That's
Adding,
like a 4-hour drive from me, so you'd think I would know more about these things, but
adding on to that, the United States of America. If we compare it to like 99% of all of the other countries, almost every single country, like Canada, Mexico, England, whatever, like they have a clear name. Like they are named, they have a name, and then all of the states or whatever provinces, whatever's inside of it, is also named. But with the United States, it doesn't have like an overarching connective name. It's just
Yeah.
these 50 different independent states, and then it's called the United States of America. So like there isn't, like it gives the name as like a group of all of these different states, to whereas
Yeah.
there's no actual name for the country. It's just called the United States, as opposed to giving it an actual name. So very, very, very lazy naming for me.
Jonathan super chatted us.
Come
Come
for
on,
Zelda.
Come for Zelda.
Stay
Stay for
for
geography.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to the next thing,
Much love, Jonathan. Thank you so much.
which is
Yes, thanks,
the
dude.
theory thing, I guess. We can try to get through this really fast.
Yeah,
No guarantees.
because
Yeah,
a lot of them are dumb, and we have to express our distaste when something's dumb.
Yeah.
We love the dumb things.
So the next everyone's going to be sort of like a top 5 list of Zelda theories. So, all right, so 152.
Cliff said United Provinces of Canada. Oof, that hurts my brain.
Yeah, it would be as
We
if
have
that's what it was
provinces.
called.
True.
If it was the
We are-
United Provinces of America, that would be the same.
That's true. It's our provinces are. We have fewer and they're way easier to remember. But they're also a lot larger.
Yeah.
And we have a far smaller population than the states, but technically a larger geographical landmass, and so we just have a lot of like wilderness.
But what's also confusing for us is like
Farms,
we
too.
have Alaska and Texas and California, which are giant states, and then we have places like Rhode Island and Massachusetts that were like you can't even have their name on the picture in the map. You have to put it on a separate stick and then put a line pointing to it.
And then Hawaii's just like
We're over there.
way
The Hawaiian Islands.
Just bye. So
This has
Ilya.
been geography with the
bye.
high. Yes.
Do you want to take this one, Ilya? I'm sure you remember.
Sure.
You don't have to say the exact same thing we did yesterday, but just, something similar to introduce.
I
Like,
can
hey,
actually
some of these
look it
theories are
up.
stupid. Some of these theories are good.
Yeah. So I'm actually just gonna find the thing you sent me
All right.
and just paraphrase it.
Yeah,
it's
just say
in
like
there.
it's part 3,
Yeah.
technically.
Come on. Where is
Just
it?
Cliff watches CBC Marketplace. Of all the Canadian broadcasting you could have chosen to watch, you choose CBC Marketplace? Cliff?
What? Okay.
Of all of the... Why, Cliff?
So
Anyways.
is this wait? This is a new intro.
Huh?
Sure.
Is this a new intro?
Do it up.
Oh no, actually, I can just like edit on the intro that you did for yesterday, so you can just start like number 16 or 15.
Sweet,
whatever.
that'll make life easier.
Yeah.
But for everyone else watching, like basically, we're just This is like a list of 20 theories, but there's actually only 19. 7 is an ad or nothing at all, and they're not very good. There's going to be other videos where we talk about the other ones. So we're starting with 10.
Yeah.
Which is confirmed. Well, some of them are confirmed, and some of them should be confirmed. And you'll see that some of these aren't even theories. Some of these, it's not that they need to be confirmed; they just are logic. You know. Anyway,
it says
occurrences.
It's weird.
I made the joke on the first 2 parts of the video to where it's as if they said Zelda theory confirmed. Link wears masks in Majora's Mask, or Zelda theory confirmed. Twilight Princess has cats. So
that's a good theory.
Yeah. So for me, I label theories as details or mysteries or plot points, whatever, that the games, either one individual game or several games, if not all of them, can come together to allude to, or different things or details are found within a certain game that allude to a bigger thing that is left unexplained. And then you can come up with a theory to connect all of those details to come up with something that makes sense and cannot be debunked. If it technically, like, a theory is easily defined as an educated guess. If there are things to go against it, it's not a theory because it's not educated. It's just an idea that someone has, which is not a theory. Like the Link is dead or Termina isn't real is not a theory because interviews and everything go against it. So, yeah.
Okay.
Hey everyone, it's me again, Elia Rose. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching this video. And you know what? If you're a fan of videos like this, you should totally subscribe and give this video a like and comment below to let us know what type of videos you would like to see us create in the future. And if you would really like to support all of us here at the GameOverJesse channel, please consider purchasing a GameOverJesse t-shirt or becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/GameOverJesse, where you can receive many rewards, such as getting shoutouts, having any topic or theory that you select discussed on the podcast or made into its own video, having your question answered, joining on as a guest on the podcast, and playing with us during our Twitch live streams at twitch.tv/GameOverJesse, and much, much more.